Good morning, friends. Welcome to Empty Cloud Monastery. This morning we're here with Venerable Vimalanyani, who will be sharing some teachings from the Agamas. Welcome to Geeta, Tracy, and Michael, who are checking in, and everybody else who I see as a little dot on the screen. So without further ado, I'll pass it on to Venerable Vimalanyani, and I'll post on the comments a PDF where you can find the sutta that Venerable will be discussing this morning. Thank you.
So, welcome everyone. Thank you for joining in. We will start as usual with the Namo Tassa, and if you would like to join, feel free to chant along. Namo Tassa Bhagavato Arahato Samma Sambuddhassa. Namo Tassa Bhagavato Arahato Samma Sambuddhassa. Namo Tassa Bhagavato Arahato Samma Sambuddhassa. Buddhang Dhammang Sanghang Namasami. So, as mentioned, today we will be talking about Bhaddā Kāpilānī. Bhaddā Kāpilānī, of course, is a nun, an ancient nun from the Buddha's time. She was the one who was foremost in the recollection of past lives, and that is well attested across all Buddhist traditions, not only in the Pali. And she was also Mahakassapa's wife. So Mahakassapa is also one of the Arahant monks. He was the one foremost in the ascetic practices, and their relationship, their marriage is also well attested across the Buddhist traditions. Some of you might be following my course about the ancient nuns that we are streaming on Tuesday mornings. And there we also have a session about Bhaddā Kāpilānī. So if you've seen that, I mean, that will be coming up in a few weeks. So don't worry. The sutta we're talking about today doesn't feature in the course. So you can still watch the session about Bhaddā Kāpilānī, and there will be no overlap. Today we are talking about the sutta from the Ekottara Āgama. And so that is not a Pali text, that is a Chinese text, a text from the Chinese canon. And the Ekottara Āgama is a parallel to the Pali Anguttara Nikaya. So this is an early text, it is not a Mahayana Sutra, this is an early sutra. And the Ekottara Āgama is very interesting for many reasons, but one reason is that there are a number of suttas in there that do not have a parallel in the Pali or any other place, in any other canon. And they feature bhikkhunis, they feature nuns, and they portray them in a very positive light. And because we have so few suttas about bhikkhunis that feature bhikkhunis prominently, where either the bhikkhunis are giving the teaching or where there is a teaching given to bhikkhunis. In the Pali canon, we have about 20 of those suttas from among like many thousands of suttas that are in the Pali canon altogether. So we have very few suttas that feature bhikkhunis, and therefore having a few more in the Ekottara Āgama is very special. And one of them we will be reading today. Normally we give you a link to a translation on Sutta Central, but there is no translation on Sutta Central into English. So I think Ayasoma has posted a link. Yeah, she is nodding. She has posted a link in the live chat to a paper by Bhante Analayo. It's called Karma and Female Birth, published in the Journal of Buddhist Ethics. So if you want to read along with today's sutta, you can see it there. In the PDF, it's on page 23. If you're reading in the Journal of Buddhist Ethics, then it's on page 127. So the sutta is a bit long, so I think we should start right away without further ado. And this sutta is about the former lives of Bhaddā Kāpilānī. And it starts as follows. I heard it like this. At one time, the Buddha was at Savatthi in Jeta's Grove, Anathapindika's park, together with a great community of bhikkhus, 500 men. So we see this is a typical introduction of a sutta, pretty much the same as in Pali, even though this is a Chinese sutta. At that time in Savatthi, there was a bhikkhuni called Bhadda, who was dwelling together with 500 bhikkhunis, of whom she was the leader. So this is again very interesting. Here we see the Buddha is there with 500 bhikkhus, Bhaddā is there with 500 bhikkhunis, and both of them are the leaders of their respective communities. And so we see that Bhaddā is set up sort of a little bit even as being on par with the Buddha, so as a very, very respected leader. And this parallelism shows us that this sutta wants to portray Bhaddā in a very positive light, as an outstanding teacher, as an outstanding leader. And also the number 500 is very unusual. Normally there's only one bhikkhuni that has 500 other bhikkhunis as her following, which is, of course, Mahapajapati, the Buddha's maternal aunt and foster mother. So ascribing 500 followers to Bhaddā again is a sign that this sutta wants to show us how outstanding Bhaddā is and what a great leader she was. So here from the start, the sutta tells us that this is a very positive sutta about bhikkhunis. Then, being in a secluded place, the bhikkhuni Bhaddā was reflecting by herself. Seated with crossed legs and with mindfulness fixed in front of her, she was recollecting events from her innumerable previous lives, whereupon she smiled. A bhikkhuni saw from afar that the bhikkhuni Bhaddā was smiling. Having seen this, she approached the other bhikkhunis and said, "The bhikkhuni Bhaddā is now alone beneath a tree, and she is smiling. What will be the reason?" So again, this introduction is very interesting. This is a typical introduction for when the Buddha is telling a past life story. So again, we see here Bhaddā kind of being a little bit compared to the Buddha, or normally what happens in the suttas, also in the Pali Canon, is the Buddha is walking past a place or sitting in a specific place and he smiles. And then Ananda, his attendant, sees that the Buddha is smiling. And Ananda then thinks, oh, Tathagatas, Buddhas do not smile without a reason. And then he asks the Buddha why he's smiling, and the Buddha will start telling a past life story. So to my knowledge, this is not attested for any other bhikkhu or bhikkhuni except for the Buddha. So this sequence of events, them smiling and other people finding that unusual and then asking, and then a past life story being told. So again, this is here Bhaddā again is shown in a narrative structure that is usually only ascribed to the Buddha. So again, a kind of a mark of distinction for Bhaddā here. So then the other 500 bhikkhunis together approached the bhikkhuni Bhaddā and paid respect with their heads at her feet. At that time, the 500 bhikkhunis said to Bhaddā, "What causes you to smile as you sit alone beneath a tree?" At that time, the bhikkhuni Bhaddā said to the 500 bhikkhunis, "Just now, beneath this tree, I was recollecting events from my innumerable previous lives, seeing again my life experiences of former times. Dying here and being reborn there, I was contemplating it all." Then the 500 bhikkhunis said further, "We wish that you would tell us of those former events." Then the bhikkhuni Bhaddā said to the 500 bhikkhunis, "In the distant past, 91 eons ago, a Buddha called Tathagata Vipassin appeared in the world." So this is again very parallel to the Pali, in the Pali tradition as well. The Buddha Vipassi appeared 91 eons ago. So again, something that is closely mirroring traditions of other schools. And this Buddha Vipassin, he was an arahant, fully awakened, accomplished in knowledge and conduct, a well-gone one, a knower of the world, an unsurpassable person, a charioteer of the path of Dharma, a teacher of devas and human beings, called a Buddha, a blessed one, who had manifested in the world. And this list of epithets here also is reminding us very closely of the Pali tradition. This is not exactly the same, but very, very similar to the standard list of epithets for the Buddha, which we know as the Itipiso. So I think most of you will be familiar, Itipiso, Bhagava, Arahang, and so on. And in the Chinese, they have preserved a very, very similar list, almost the same list of epithets for the Buddha. And at that time, the region called Bandumati was flourishing with a population beyond counting. At that time, the Tathagata was wandering in that country. leading a community of 168,000 bhikkhus. So that number might seem a little bit exaggerated, but this is very typical again. Also in the Pali tradition, in most traditions of Buddhism, the further you go back in time, the bigger the sanghas of the Buddhas get. So in the time of our Buddha, Bhaddā Kāpilānī, his sangha of arahants is usually described as 1,250 arahants. And the further you go back in time, the bigger the numbers get for the previous Buddhas. And since this Buddha is so far back, 91 eons back, he has this very large sangha of 168,000 bhikkhus. And surrounded by them on all sides, he was teaching them the Dharma. The Buddha's name was then renowned in the four directions thus: the Buddha Vipassin possesses all marks of a Buddha. He is a good field of merit for everyone. At that time, in that region, there was a youth called Brahmadeva, who was of beautiful appearance, rarely found in the world. Then that youth was walking in the streets and alleys, holding a bejeweled parasol in his hand. A female householder, who was beautiful as well, was then also walking along that road. All the people were looking at her. Then the youth thought, now I too am beautiful, and I am holding a bejeweled parasol in my hand. Yet none of the people look at me. All of these people together are looking at this woman. I should now devise a means to make people look at me. Then that youth went out of that town and approached the Buddha Vipassin. Holding the bejeweled parasol over the Buddha with his hands, he worshipped him for 7 days and 7 nights and made this aspiration: if the Buddha Vipassin has such supernatural power, such supernatural strength, and is a supreme field of merit in the world and in the heavens, then may I, endowed with this merit in a future life, have a female body, such that on seeing it, there will be no one who will not be thrilled with joy. At that time, having worshipped that Buddha for 7 days and 7 nights, the youth lived out his lifespan and was after that reborn in the heaven of the 33 with a female body of utmost beauty, foremost among Devis. Devis are female goddesses, surpassing other Devis in the 5 types of excellence. What are the 5? That is, they are divine lifespan, divine complexion, divine happiness, divine might, and divine dominion. So here we have a case of a male layperson, and he is very jealous of a female layperson, and then he makes merit. He serves the Buddha for 7 days and 7 nights. He makes merit with the specific purpose to be reborn as a female. That's quite unusual. For the Ekottara Āgama, this is not unusual. There are more suttas that are similar, where males aspire to be reborn as females. But generally, in the Buddhist tradition, especially later tradition, and even nowadays, there is an extremely prevalent belief, not only in the Theravada, but also in other traditions, the Tibetan tradition, for example, that as a woman, you should not aspire to actually become an arahant or to practice properly. You should actually just make merit, serve the monks, and then aspire to be reborn in a male body in your next life. And then when you have a male body, then you should practice. So being reborn as a female is seen as a sign of bad karma in many later traditions, and in some places, even in modern thinking. But here we have a sutta that directly contradicts this idea. Here somebody is serving a Buddha for 7 days and 7 nights and using the merit that they have gained there, that he has gained there, to get a female body. So the female body is the fruit of extremely good karma of serving a Buddha for 7 days and 7 nights. And obviously the aspiration is a bit shallow. So if you serve a Buddha for 7 days and 7 nights, then please use that merit to make progress on the path. Don't waste it on a rebirth in whatever kind of body. But anyway, that's what they do here, what he does here. And his aspiration succeeds, and he does get a female body. And it's very beautiful. Kind of a waste of the merit, but okay. Then, having seen her, the Devas of the 33 said to one another, "This Devi is superb. No one is her equal." Some Devas among them said, "This Devi and I should become husband and wife." And competing with one another, they quarreled. Then the great king of the Devas said, "Do not quarrel with each other. Whoever among you is able to proclaim the most excellent poem can take this Devi for his wife." So on the other hand, they also could have asked the Devi who she wants to marry and let her pick. But okay, apparently they have other ways of handling this. And I think it's very cute that they quarrel and then they try to resolve this with a poem. So I think in the human realm, they would probably resolve this maybe with violence. But here they are resolving it with a poem. So that's very cute. And this story here was actually very popular. This story is not only found in the Ekottara Āgama, this is also found in other places, for example, the Mahasangika Vinaya. So it seems that many people like this story. And then at that time, one Deva spoke this poem. "Whether I get up or whether I sit down again, being awake or falling asleep, there is no joy for me. When I'm asleep for a while, only right after that am I without desire for you." So the first Deva says, at all waking times, he is full of desire only when he's asleep or just after waking up. He doesn't have desire for that Devi. And at that time, another Deva spoke this poem. "You're right now the cause of my delight. Being asleep, he does not miss you. But I am now aroused by lustful thoughts, like the beating of a battle drum." So they're now trying to surpass each other. The second one says, "Well, if he's asleep, he doesn't even miss you, but I'm always aroused like a battle drum. So I'm more lustful than him." And at that time, another Deva spoke this poem. "Even if the battle drum is beaten, yet there comes a time when it becomes still. But my desire for you is a quickly spreading disease, like flowing water that never stops." So again, he says, well, my desire is much more than his funny battle drum. I'm like water that never stops. So again, he's surpassing the previous one. And then at that time, another Deva spoke this poem. "Even water that carries away great logs does in time become still, but I constantly think of you with desire, unblinking like a slain elephant." So I'm not quite sure about this metaphor of the slain elephant, but obviously also the purpose of this poem is to show that they are more in love than the previous Deva. And at that time, the most respected Deva among all the Devas, so this is the king of Devas, spoke this poem. "You Devas are still at ease. Each of you is able to speak a poem. Now I do not know for myself, am I alive or am I dead?" So his poem, he says, I can't even compose a poem. I'm so much in love with you. And at that time, all Devas said to that Deva, "Well done, Deva. The poem you have spoken is the most clear and excellent. Today, the king of Devas should be given this Devi." So the king of Devas was the one who just spoke this poem. At that time, the Devi entered the palace of the king of Devas. And now Bhadda again addresses the other bhikkhunis and says, "Sisters, you should not have any doubt about this. The reason being that you think the youth who at that time worshipped the Buddha by holding a bejeweled parasol over him, was he someone else? It should not be seen in this way. The youth at that time was me." So Bhadda identifies herself as that youth in her previous life. And then she recounts another past life, and she says, "In the past, 31 eons ago, the Tathagata Sikhin appeared in the world." So this is again the same as in the Pali. We also, in the Pali tradition, say that Sikhi Buddha appeared 31 eons ago. He was wandering in the Marichi region, being accompanied by a great bhikkhu community, 160,000 men. So again, we see it's a very big community, but it's slightly smaller than Vipassana Buddha because Sikhi Buddha is closer to us in time. So the sizes of the assemblies decreases slightly. At that time, that Devi, after her lifespan had come to its end, was reborn among human beings, taking a female body of utmost beauty rarely found in the world. Then the Tathagata Sikhin, when the time had come to beg for alms food, put on his robes, took his bowl, and entered the town of Marichi. Then that Devi had in turn become the wife of a householder. She offered excellent food and drink to the Tathagata Sikhin, and she also made this aspiration. "Endowed with the merit of this deed, wherever I am reborn, may I not fall into the three evil destinies, and may I be of such beautiful appearance as is unusual among human beings. So again, she has the opportunity to serve a Buddha, and she makes merit again. She gives him food. But again, she's using that merit in exactly the same way as before. So we see how habit patterns play themselves out over many lives. And again, she's kind of sort of wasting the merit that she just made for a beautiful rebirth, a rebirth as a beautiful woman. And she makes the same aspiration as before. And at that time, that woman, after her lifespan had come to its end, was reborn in the heaven of the 33. And again, she has the same female body that is very beautiful. And Bhaddā identifies herself as identifies this as a previous rebirth of hers. And then in the same eon, so 31 eons ago, the Tathagata Vesabu appeared in the world. And I'm skipping this part because the sutta is very long. Again, the Devi is reborn among humans because her merit has run out. She's again very beautiful. She's again a woman. And again, she serves the Buddha Vesabu and makes the exact same aspiration for a female body in the future. And her aspiration again succeeds, and she's again reborn in the heaven of the 33 as a beautiful Devi. And then after that, then that woman lived out her lifespan, and after death came to be reborn among human beings in the great town of Varanasi. She was a female servant of the wife of the householder Chandaba, and her appearance was ugly, displeasing to the sight of people. So apparently her merit has run out, and basically nothing much is left of the merit that she has made before. So again, shows you, if you have the good chance of meeting a Buddha, then use the merit wisely, because eventually it will run out if you don't invest it in practicing of the Dhamma and making actual progress. And since Vesabu had departed from the world, no Buddha had appeared, but a Pacheka Buddha was wandering around at that time. Then the wife of the householder Chandaba said to her female servant, "Go around outside and look for a recluse who is of such beautiful appearance that he will inspire my confidence. Lead him to the house. I wish to worship him." So apparently the wife of the householder Chandaba was equally shallow and thought that a recluse, the worthiness of a recluse is measured in how beautiful he looks. So at that time, that female servant went out of the house and looked outside for a recluse. She came across the Pacheka Buddha, who was wandering in the town begging alms food. However, he was of ugly and repulsive appearance. Then that female servant said to the Pacheka Buddha, "The lady of the house wishes to meet you. Please come to the house." She then entered and said to her mistress, "A recluse has come. You can come and meet him." When the householder's wife saw the recluse, her mind was displeased. She said to her female servant, "Send him away again. I will not give to him. The reason is because of his ugly appearance." At that time, her female servant said to the housewife, "If the housewife does not make an offering to the recluse, then I will now take my food allowance for today and use it all to make an offering to him." So apparently Bhaddā in the previous life, so the servant here, she did plant some wholesome seeds in the past, and she feels moved to make an offering to the recluse. And so every day there was a certain amount of food allocated to each servant, and now she's taking all the food that was allocated to her for today and wants to give it to that Pacheka Buddha. So she is going one day without food in order to be able to offer to the Pacheka Buddha. Then that housewife brought out her food allowance, one measure of finely broken rice. Then that female servant took it and offered it to the recluse. When the Pacheka Buddha had received this food, he flew up into the air and performed the 18 transformations. So the 18 transformations, these are all the psychic powers. So like in the Pali, we also have a list. We don't call it the 18 transformations in the Pali, but it's very, very similar in terms of content. So this is, flying through the air, walking through walls, walking on water, and making yourself invisible and stuff like that. So he's displaying all those miracles And then the householder's female servant made the aspiration again. Endowed with this merit, wherever I am reborn, may I not fall into the 3 evil destinies, and may I, in a future life, have a female body of the utmost beauty. So again, we see she's purposely aspiring for a female body. She has a lot of merit, and she's using that for a female body. So clearly, female bodies are not a sign of lack of merit. Then that Pacheka Buddha, holding in his hand the bowl with the food in it, flew around the town 3 times. The householder Chandaba was leading a gathering of 500 merchants in the community hall. Then the townspeople, men and women, adults and children, saw the Pacheka Buddha holding in his hand the bowl with the food and flying through the air. On seeing this, they said to one another, "Whose merit is this? Who has met this Pacheka Buddha and offered him food?" Then the householder's female servant said to the housewife, please come outside to look at the power of the recluse. He's flying through the air and performing the 18 transformations. His powers are immeasurable." Then the householder's wife said to a female servant, if you give to me all the merit you gained from offering food to the recluse today, I shall give you 2 days' food right away. Her female servant replied, "I cannot agree to transfer the merit." So now the housewife regrets that she did an offer and gets somewhat jealous of the servant and is trying to buy the merit with food. But her female servant, again, apparently Bhaddā in a previous life did have some wholesome roots and some kind of wisdom, and knows that having that merit is more valuable than material things such as 2 days of food. And the housewife said, "I will give you 4 days food right away, up to 10 days food right away." Her female servant replied, "I cannot agree to transfer the merit." The housewife said, "I will now give you 100 gold coins." Her female servant replied, "I do not need that either." The housewife said further, "I will now give you 200 up to 1,000 gold coins." Her female servant replied, "I do not need that either." The housewife said, "I will set you free. You will no longer be a servant." Her female servant replied, "I do not seek to be an independent person either." The housewife said further, "You will become the housewife and I will become the servant." Her female servant replied, "I do not seek to become the housewife either." So apparently she's quite clear that the merit is more valuable than anything that she could attain in this life, any material possession or any status. And then the housewife obviously gets angry, is very displeased with the way the conversation is going. And she says, "I will now take hold of you and beat you, mutilate you by cutting off your ears and nose, cutting off your hands and feet. I will cut off your head." Her female servant replied, "All such pain I can bear, but I will not transfer the merit from the offering. My body is subject to the lady of the house. The goodness of my mind is quite a different matter." At that time, the householder's wife beat her female servant. Then each of the 500 merchants was saying, "This saintly person had come today to beg for food. He would certainly have been given an offering at my home." So everybody is hoping that their own family made the merit of the offering. Then the householder Chandaba dismissed all of the people, returned to his house and went inside. He saw that his wife had taken hold of the female servant and was beating her. He asked, "Why is this female servant being beaten?" Then the female servant informed him fully of the events. Then the householder Chandaba was delighted and thrilled that the Pacheka Buddha had been given food at his house. Unable to contain himself, he made the housewife a female servant and placed the female servant in the position of housewife. At that time, the king who ruled the town of Varanasi was called Brahmadatta. Then the great king heard that the Pacheka Buddha had been given food at the house of the householder Chandaba. He was extremely pleased that an arahant had been received and a timely offering had been made to him. King Brahmadatta dispatched a man to summon the householder Chandaba. He said to him, "Is it true that food was given to the saintly arahant at your house?" The householder replied to the king, "It is true that the arahant was received and food was offered to him." Then, having investigated it, King Brahmadatta gave him a reward and also promoted him to a higher position. I think it's very, very lovely the way they envisioned the society in the past, where everybody is just so excited about making merit, except obviously for the housewife. But where the whole town is wondering like who offered this food, and I wish it was my family, and where the king even gets involved. And if you make an offering to an arahant or to a Pacheka Buddha, then you get promoted. And where everybody's just, you know, so excited about serving recluses, serving renunciants. And, you know, where this is the talk of the town, and where everybody's just really, really interested, and really also values the values giving, and where everybody's just excited and joyful for each other if you have the opportunity to do this. Even the king gets excited about these kind of things. So I think it's just really lovely the way they thought that an ideal society of the past would have been like. And then the former female servant, now the housewife of the householder, lived out her lifespan, and after death was reborn in the heaven of the 33. She was of beautiful appearance, rarely found in the world, and she surpassed all the other devas in the 5 types of excellence. Sisters, was the female servant at that time someone else? It should not be seen in this way. The householder's female servant at that time was me. So in this auspicious eon, a Buddha appeared in the world called the Tathagata Kakusanda. So this auspicious eon, the auspicious eon, the Bhaddā Kāpa, is of course our eon, the eon that we are living in, and it's called the auspicious eon because there are 5 Buddhas in our eon, which is very unusual. And we've already had 4 Buddhas, so Kakusanda, Konagamana, Kassapa, and Gautama Buddha. And we're still waiting for 1 Buddha, Maitreya Buddha. But yeah, we are lucky in our eon because we have so many Buddhas. So here, Tathagata Kakusanda has appeared. Then the Devi lived out her lifespan, and after death was reborn among human beings. And again, she is a housewife. She makes an offering to the Buddha, and she again aspires to have a female body and is reborn in the heaven of the 33. And then she falls down from there again, becomes a human being, and at the time of Buddha Konagamana, she again worships him with golden flowers and makes the same aspiration, and is again reborn as a woman in the heaven of the 33. And then she passes away from there, becomes a human again. Kassapa Buddha appears, and she worships Kassapa Buddha and makes the same aspiration for a female body, and is again reborn in the heaven of the 33. So one thing that this sutta really drives home over and over again is that, number one, once we have a strong habit pattern that really plays out over eons and eons and eons and so many uncountable lifetimes, basically. And when we're so stuck in that it's very difficult for us to free ourselves from that way of thinking. So she keeps on, like she had this one aspiration 91 eons ago to be a beautiful woman because she once saw a beautiful woman when she was a man. And then that keeps on playing out over eons of lifetimes. And all the times that she meets a Buddha, she's wasting all the merit that she gets for this kind of shallow aspiration. And doesn't even really understand what she's missing. And the other thing is also how pointless samsara really is. Like this round of rebirth, it just keeps going and going. And you make merit and you get a beautiful rebirth or a good rebirth, but then your merit runs out and you fall down again. And she was lucky because each time she met a Buddha and was able to make more merit, but it actually could get much worse. Like you could have much worse rebirth than she was having here. So the one thing that we also see in the sutta is how pointless it is to continue in this round of rebirth, because it really doesn't go anywhere. Even if you get reborn in a heaven, eventually that merit will run out and there's nothing left of the merit that you made. So it's not worth continuing on in samsara. And then finally, in this auspicious eon, the Buddha Sakyamuni, so this is Gautama Buddha, our Buddha, appeared in the world. Then that Devi was reborn after death in the town of Rajagaha. She became the wife of the Brahmin Kapila. So this, I think, is a small corruption in the text. As we will see, she's actually the wife of Mahakassapa. And this text here should read, she became the daughter of the Brahmin Kapila. That's why she's called Kāpilānī, Bhaddā Kāpilānī, because her father was the Brahmin Kapila. And she's of the Kapila clan. And if Mahakassapa like if her husband was Kapila, then she wouldn't be of the Kapila clan, but because her father is of the Kapila clan, she is also of the Kapila clan, Bhaddā Kāpilānī. And she was of beautiful appearance, excelling the appearance of all other women. The Brahmin Kapila's wife/daughter resembled a polished golden image, as a result of which other women were as if blackened by ink. So this story is also well attested across all Buddhist traditions, including the Pali tradition, where we believe, or where the stories tell us that Mahakasspa's wife, Bhaddā Kāpilānī, looked like a golden statue. And her mind had no desire for the 5 sensual pleasures. So this is remarkable. Apparently, she did learn a bit of Dhamma from the previous Buddhas. And so she at least had the ability to somehow temporarily suppress desire for these 5 sensual pleasures. So this is very unusual, obviously. And then Bhaddā says, was this wife/daughter someone else? Sisters, it should not be seen in this way. The Brahmin's wife/daughter at that time was me. Sisters, you should know, because of the merits of former events, I became the wife of Pipali Manava, that is of Mahakassapa. So here the text itself tells us that she actually became the wife of Mahakassapa. So that seems, again, to show us that before she was the daughter of the Brahmin Kapila, not the wife. Unless, obviously, she was married twice. But, well, that doesn't fit with the stories of, the other traditions. Anyway, whether she was married once or twice, she did become the wife of Mahakassapa. And both of them actually didn't want to get married, according to the stories, but their parents tricked them into the marriage because both of them actually wanted to go forth, and the parents didn't allow it. And then they were forced to get married, but they never consummated the marriage because both of them were actually free from the 5 sense pleasures. And then they go forth together. According to the usual story, the other traditions, they go forth together because both of them want to seek a way out of samsara. Here in this particular version of the text, Mahakassapa goes forth first, and then at a later day, Bhaddā Kāpilānī goes forth. This is unusual. That is not the normal story. And then the text continues, I was recollecting my lives in former days with a female body. For this reason, I smiled to myself just now. I had been covered in ignorance by not knowing that I worshipped 6 Tathagatas seeking to get a female body. This is the reason I smiled, because of my experience in former days. So here Bhaddā Kāpilānī is actually smiling at her own ignorance and smiling at the total foolishness of worshipping 6 Tathagatas and then making an aspiration to get a female body instead of making an aspiration to practice and attain arahantship. But fortunately for her, it all worked out in the end, and she did become an arahant and an outstanding nun at Sakyamuni Buddha, Gautama Buddha's time. And at that time, many bhikkhus who had heard that the Bhikkhuni Bhaddā had recollected events from her own innumerable previous lives approached the Blessed One. They paid respect with their heads at his feet, sat down to one side, and told the Tathagata all that had happened. At that time, the Blessed One said to the bhikkhus, have you seen any other bhikkhuni among my disciples who recollects events from innumerable lives like her? The bhikkhu said to the Buddha, we have not, Blessed One. The Buddha said to the bhikkhus, among my disciples, the foremost disciple in recollecting events from innumerable lives is the Bhikkhuni Kāpilānī. At that time, the bhikkhus, having heard what the Buddha said, were delighted and received it respectfully. So here we see the Buddha placing Bhaddā Kāpilānī in the position of the foremost nun among those who are able to recollect past lives. And that, again, is something that is attested across many different traditions. We have several Chinese texts that say this, and also, of course, in the Pali tradition, we have the same foremost quality ascribed to Bhaddā Kāpilānī. So this is the end of today's sutta. I think this sutta is outstanding, especially for many reasons, but for 2 reasons especially. One, that it shows us that female rebirth was not thought of as something that is the result of bad karma. Instead, it is shown here over and over again in the sutta that female rebirth is the result of outstanding good karma, the result of karma of serving various Buddhas. And the other thing is that it shows us the absolute pointlessness of samsara and continuing on in this round of rebirths, because we see what has happened to Bhadda over and over again. She just went up and down, up and down, up and down all the time over so many thousands of eons, or so many dozens of eons here in this case. So yeah, if you have the chance to meet a Buddha, then please don't waste the opportunity, especially nowadays. There's no Buddha around, but still the teachings are around. So we have the chance to actually practice the teaching. So, you know, don't waste your merit on hoping for a good rebirth if you have the chance to actually practice the Dhamma. I think that is the main message from this sutta. And at this point, if you have any questions or comments, then please type them in the live chat and I will see if I can answer them.
Hannamayam Dhammakataya Sadhukaram Dadamase Sadhu 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 Anumodami. Thank you, Venerable, for sharing this beautiful sutta. That was actually very enjoyable, quite lovely. And good to see a lot of friends who have joined us in the meanwhile as well, who are all quite happy too. Hi, Anita, David, Tara, good to see you. Melissa, Jayanta, good to see you, friend. Jorge, Marina, Karnkan, Celestino as well, and Putpanlock. Okay, so Gita says, yes, Venerable Vimalanyani, what a waste of merits. I guess ignorance must have prevented him from seeking the ultimate goal of Nibbana. Yeah, sounds familiar to all of us since we're all wandering here. And Gita asks, Vimalanyani, why doesn't Bhaddā Kāpilānī not share her merit with the householder's wife? We learn to share all of our merits with all. Is this not correct?
Yeah, I think I was actually kind of expecting that kind of question to come up. So obviously here in the sutta, the idea behind sharing or not sharing seems to be you lose your own merit if you give it to the other one. And Bhaddā Kāpilānī obviously thought it's much more valuable to have the merit than to have any of those material things or any of these gains in status that the householder's wife was offering. So that seems to be the premise that this sutta is working from. So obviously normally we try to, we are very much encouraged to share merit. But the thing is that we have to understand is when we share merit, it's not that our own merit decreases, the merit that we have made stays with us, and we are inviting other people to rejoice in what we are doing and in this way make their own merit. So it's not that our merit goes away, but it's that the merit all over increases because other people join in and they rejoice and make their own merit. So actually we are accumulating more and more merit when we invite other people to join in and to share the merit. So yeah, this particular aspect of the sutta is not how we traditionally understand the way that sharing of merit works.
I was taking it perhaps that more that the layperson was, the housewife was using it as a sort of trade, like I'll give you all of these possessions in place of your merit. That was my interpretation. So that's why the former Bhaddā Kāpilānī was like, no, like basically she was creating the conditions for them not to crave sensual pleasures as in her latest rebirth.
That's a good thinking also. Yeah, they were basically treating it as a commodity, whereas Bhaddā Kāpilānī was sort of detaching from those sensual things, material things, and for that reason she was able to let go of the 5 sense pleasures in her last life. That's actually an interesting way of thinking about it. Yeah,
also perhaps giving a teaching also to the housewife of like, you can keep all your sensual pleasures. You should make merit instead. And Michael says, thank you, Aya. It's wonderful to follow the careers of the enlightened bhikkhunis. Yes, we have actually a whole series done by Venerable Vimalanyani on our YouTube channel, so you should all watch it. She's done incredible work and study on the subject matter.
It's on Tuesday mornings, every Tuesday at 8 a.m. And I think we're already 2/3 through with the course, so the recordings should all be there. There's a playlist on the channel.
Yeah. And Gita says, exactly, we share merits with all beings on a daily basis with absolutely no expectations. Yeah. And, well, lots of enthusiasm. Another thought that came in my mind, because there are no other questions, but I'll give some time to the people to, I don't know if Bhante Sudaso, if you have any comments. But I was thinking, actually, there's in the Bhikkhuni Samyutta, in the Samyutta Nikaya, like the framework of Mara coming to tempt the Bhikkhunis is actually identical to the Mara Samyutta, where there's Mara that goes and tempts the Buddha. So it's actually very interesting how there is a similar sort of framework in how Bhaddā Kāpilānī is described and smiling and recollecting the past lives. So do you feel like this sutta was just kind of forgotten and slipped away from the Pali version, or do you think it's two different traditions, or why do you think it's missing fundamentally?
Yeah, it's interesting what you just mentioned. So sometimes, like in the Pali tradition, the situation about bhikkhunis, or actually in all Buddhist traditions, the situation with bhikkhunis is a little bit messy, because sometimes we find all this sexist, misogynist stuff in the suttas, and then at other times when the bhikkhunis themselves are described, it's actually quite outstanding the way they are described. Sometimes we find them in situations, as you just mentioned, where usually we only find the Buddha in. So we have the Buddha in those situations, and then we have bhikkhunis in that situation, but we don't really find bhikkhus in that situation. So it seems like they're almost on par with the Buddha to portray how outstanding and how excellent they are. Whereas we don't even find any of the outstanding monks in that same situation. So yeah, in this sutta, it's kind of similar with Bhaddā Kāpilānī. And I'm not sure if this was lost from the Pali tradition, because the Ekottara Āgama has quite a few suttas about bhikkhunis that we don't find in the Pali. So then, like, it's quite possible that this is not the only one. So either there was a large chunk of bhikkhuni suttas that were taken out from the Pali, that were preserved in non-Pali traditions. Yeah, maybe the Pali just wasn't that much interested in bhikkhunis. I don't know. I'm not quite sure why this is missing. But the Ekottara Āgama is such an interesting Āgama because it is so substantially different from the other Āgamas. So, like, if you compare the Digha Āgama, the Dirgha Āgama, the Samyukta Āgama, or the Madhyama Āgama, they are really, really quite similar to the Pali, but the Ekottara has a lot of features that make it very different from all the other schools, all the other Agamas. So the Ekottara Āgama also has somewhat later material. So whereas the other Agamas are clearly early Buddhist texts, in the Ekottara Āgama, they seem to have kept it open much longer, so they included material from a somewhat later date. For example, in this sutta, the sutta here is somewhat in the style of Apadana literature, because in Apadana literature, there's a lot of focus on past lives and recollections and telling the rebirth stories of the bhikkhunis. And Apadanas are usually material that developed in, it can have an early core, definitely, because also in the suttas we have Jataka stories and those past life stories. But these kind of stories often developed over a few decades or centuries after the Buddha's passing. And then we find a little bit of Mahayana material in the Ekottara Āgama as well. So clearly that must be from a somewhat later date, although it's not very, very late. So the Ekottara Āgama is just a really interesting collection of texts. And there are many texts in the Ekottara Āgama that don't have proper parallels. So I'm not sure if this is missing from the Pali because it was left out of the Pali, or if this came to be created at a little bit of a later time. I'm not quite sure. The Ekottara Āgama is really still quite a mystery to scholars. Yeah.
Thank you, Venerable. And can you also think of any other bhikkhuni story where of past lives where the bhikkhuni is represented as a male, not necessarily who has the aspiration to have a female rebirth, but aside from Isidasi, like, is there anyone else that you can think of?
For example, Bhaddā Kāpilānī. Bhaddā Kāpilānī is often identified with Yashodhara, the Buddha's wife, but not necessarily so. So in the Pali tradition, the link between Bhaddā Kāpilānī and Yashodhara is a little bit clearer. In the Ekottara Āgama, it does seem to us that Bhaddā Kāpilānī is a different person. She's not Yashodhara. And she had rebirths as a man. And if I remember correctly, she also made an aspiration to be reborn as a woman then, and therefore got a female rebirth. But definitely she got a female rebirth, and that was seen as good karma. I don't know if I don't remember if she made the aspiration or not. We also have one story where the Buddha assumes a female form to teach one of the bhikkhus. So he sees one of the bhikkhus somewhere and he's misbehaving. I don't remember all the details because it's a long time that I read this. And then he takes the form of a bhikkhuni and admonishes that bhikkhu in the form of a bhikkhuni. I think we also have a past life story of a Buddha being a princess a very, very long time in the past. So yeah, we have quite a few stories in the Chinese sources where there is a female to male or male to female conversion that is not seen as a bad karma.
Thank you. Yeah, I was curious because basically from what I've been studying so far, but I'm still in the process, I was noticing how it was very kind of gender consistent, and I was like, oh, very interesting that, you know, they change, perhaps they become animals, etc., but the gender is somewhat consistent.
In the Pali tradition, that is very consistent. In the Chinese, there seems to be a lot more fluidity, and Bhante and Aliyu has published quite a few papers about that. So if you want, you can read some of the translations there.
Great, thank you. Yeah, thank you very much. I definitely will. And Gita expresses in approval. Actually, she completely enjoyed the series on the theories of old, in particular likes Yasodhara's story. And yeah, she's very thankful, as well as everyone else. Okay, doesn't seem like there are any other comments or questions for the time being, but next week, we'll have a few sessions with Venerable Vimalanyani, either on Sumedha, as it's currently advertised, or there might be
on something else. Yeah. We will see.
Because Buddhism is always a disorganized religion, and we are carrying the tradition loud and proud. But this evening, you can meet us for monk chat with a panel of monastics here from Empty Cloud. And you can bring any questions that you might have on the bhikkhunis, on bhikkhus, on both bhikkhunis and bhikkhus, or enlightenment, or how to become beautiful in next rebirths and stay in samsara for eons. All of those questions can be brought this evening at 7:30 p.m. New York City time. And as mentioned, next week we'll have also the first session with Venerable Punnadhammo. Ajahn Punnadhammo is a senior monk in the Thai forest tradition of Ajahn Chah, who will be sharing the first of a series on dependent origination, our favorite topic of September. And that is happening Wednesday at 7:30 p.m. New York City time. And also on Wednesday at 8 a.m., we have the last episode with Shifu Simplicity, our Mahayana Bhikkhuni, a friend from Berlin, Germany, who couldn't make it a few days ago because she was sick. So she's giving the last session, the last class on that series on Wednesday. And of course, if you're around the monastery in New Jersey, please come and join us tomorrow evening at 6 p.m. We have a meditation on the lawn as usual, and on Sunday, special afternoon of mindfulness. So hopefully we'll see you there. All right, so we can end with 3 sadhus. Sadhu, sadhu, sadhu. May you be all well and happy.